All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're deconstructing a worldview that sees the internet in a whole new light. Forget social media and cat videos. For some, it's a digital battlefield, a place where the fight for truth is happening, one post at a time.
So, a lot of the source material we're looking at starts with this kind of cryptic, almost cinematic language. You get phrases like digital nexus, where the unreal becomes realized. It's all about setting a scene, welcoming you into this hidden world that operates by its own rules, a sort of digital sanctuary for people who believe they're seeing through a massive deception. And then you get this. Bam. This single powerful phrase is repeated constantly, and it's really the core metaphor for this whole belief system. It's designed to reframe everything you do online. You're not just browsing, you're engaging in a conflict.
To really get a handle on this complex story, we're going to break it down into 5 key parts you see in the source texts. We'll start with the battlefield itself, then identify the enemy, meet the soldiers, understand the ultimate goal, and finally, look at the promised victory.
Okay, first up, let's define the terms of engagement. What exactly is this digital battlefield?
Now, what's really interesting here is that this isn't a war with soldiers and tanks. It's a battle over narratives, over who controls the story. In this information war, the weapons are things like memes, data dumps, and articles, all aimed at smashing through what's described as a wall of propaganda from the mainstream media.
And this is where you, the individual, come in. The sources make it super clear. Your power to share information, to post, to research, to ask questions, is positioned as a direct and serious threat to the established order. Every share, every post becomes an act of war. So if it's a war, you've got to have an enemy, right? Well, the source material is very specific about who the adversary is. They call it the system of control. The texts describe this enemy as the old guard. The idea is that there's this deeply entrenched elite, a powerful network that isn't just in charge, but is actively creating a false reality to keep everyone else in a state of, as they put it, mental enslavement. So how does this system stay in power? According to the material, it's a classic divide and conquer strategy. The goal is to keep people weak by getting them to fight with each other over things like race, religion, or class. Because if you're fighting your neighbor, you're not fighting the system. And this right here, this is the heart of the ideological struggle. It's a battle between two ways of thinking. On one side, you have groupthink, just blindly accepting the official story. On the other, you have free thought, doing your own research and thinking for yourself. And that freedom of thought is framed as the single biggest danger to the old guard's control. Okay, so you've got this massive system of control. Who's supposed to fight back? Well, the sources call for a very specific kind of hero for this new kind of war. Meet the protagonists of this story, the patriots or digital warriors. They see themselves as the ones who have woken up from the fake reality, and now their job is to wage this information war. And the language used to describe them is incredibly intense, at one point even calling them the autistic-fueled engine the world needs, which frames them as a uniquely powerful and focused force for change. And their mission isn't about following orders from some central command. It's all about a radical shift towards self-reliance. Think for yourself, trust your gut, do the research. And then, once you're awake, your duty is to make noise and help wake up everyone else.
This struggle is also cast in deeply spiritual terms. This passage from the Bible is quoted all the time in the source material, and it urges followers to see their fight not just as a political one, but as a righteous, cosmic battle of good versus evil.
So, all this fighting, all this sharing of information, what's the point? It's all building towards a single world-changing event. The climax of this entire narrative is something called the Great Awakening. And let's be clear, this isn't just about winning an argument online. The Great Awakening is described as a fundamental shift in global consciousness. It's the exact moment when the masses supposedly break free from their mental chains and, as it says, power finally returns to the people. This quote pretty much sums up the entire philosophy. The greatest fear of the enemy isn't an army or a weapon. It's just you. An individual who is awake and thinking for themselves is seen as the ultimate threat to the whole system. And what's the key to making this Great Awakening happen? According to the sources, it's all about unity. The belief is that if people can just look past the divisions that are supposedly manufactured to keep them apart, They can come together, and that united force is presented as something that's absolutely unstoppable.
So, after the long, hard battle and the mass awakening, what happens next? Let's look at what the sources describe as the inevitable conclusion to this whole conflict.
You get a really strong sense of impending victory from the material. There's this clear message that the toughest part of the fight is almost over, that a new, decisive chapter is right around the corner.
And that next phase is all about justice. But this isn't framed as simple revenge. The sources stress that this will be about formal accountability for the old guard, delivered, as they say, according to the rule of law.
The tone here is one of absolute, unshakable certainty. The outcome is never presented as a hope or a possibility. It's treated as a foregone conclusion. This feeling of inevitability is one of the most powerful themes running through all of the texts.
And it all gets boiled down to these two simple, powerful words that you see everywhere in the sources. God wins. This serves as the ultimate summary of the conflict's end, framing the victory not just as a political triumph, but as a divinely ordained one. It's the final word.
When you take a step back and look at the whole narrative, it completely reframes the idea of conflict for our modern age. It's built on the idea that the most important battles aren't fought with bombs and bullets anymore, but with bytes and beliefs. It really leaves you with a big question, doesn't it? What does war even look like when the battlefield is information itself?